Welcome to the Rich Mind Podcast.
Yeah, I don't know if I've ever put an actual number to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. You were prepping me with some questions here. I said, okay, we need to hit record so we can get some folks engaged in our conversation. Today we're talking about our E to E ratio, and that may or may not be something you've ever heard of before. This comes back from Brian Tracy, and I believe Brian's still with us. So once again, his content is fantastic as well. It may resonate with you, it may not. Certain things he teaches about does a lot, and other things that just like, it's not good or bad. It just sometimes things people say, right, really resonate with who you are or what you're becoming. But one thing he taught me way back at the very beginning was focusing on your E to E ratio and why that's important to your personal development, to your success. And what E to E stands for is your entertainment to education ratio. Your entertainment to education ratio. And so a big part of the podcast, and we've talked about the PEAK framework in the past, and just to quickly go over that one more time, the PEAK framework, P-E-A-K. P is for personal development. You've got to focus on yourself. We've talked about that in recent podcast episodes about winning within. You've got to really focus on winning within, and you do that with your personal development. The E is education. I'm really a big advocate of self-education. I know Greg is as well, right? So that's where this E to E ratio really comes in. And that's where this really stems and falls into great with this PEAK framework. So the A is taking the action. You've got to take massive action. And then K is for knowledge, seeking knowledge from other folks that have been there, done that. The Brian Tracys, the Earl Nightingales, the Jim Rohns, you name them. It's been a lot of fun. So E to E ratio, I know you've got a lot of things going. I brought this up to you as a potential topic, and you were like, yeah, I think I've heard of that, but I'm not exactly sure where to go with that. I'm like, that's exactly why I wanted to bring it up. So what are your thoughts on that, Greg? The E to E ratio.
Yeah, so this is why I love personal development, because there's always something out there that you've never heard of that you can implement. And yeah, when you said that E to E ratio, I never heard of it before, but then you kind of explained it of entertainment to education ratio, and I kind of understood the concept, but never in all my years have I heard E to E ratio. And I am a Brian Tracy fan, but I just it never crossed my path. So yeah, I'm really curious. I actually have some questions for you on the E to E, because I think you're a little bit more well-versed in it than I am, but I'm excited.
So well-versed just meaning I've tried to implement it more and more in my life than somebody that hasn't been exposed to it. So when I first got started, and this was, even the iPods were just brand new at the time. So it's like mobile listening was not a thing. And so one thing that Brian taught as well is that he always would say, turn your car into a mobile classroom. You can get an MBA's worth of education by turning on folks of wisdom in your car when you're commuting back and forth to work. And that's exactly what I did. I had a minimum of an hour commute one way to work every day. And that was my retail job. I was commuting out of town. And so that's what I did. When I heard that for the first time, I was like, okay, that's easy, right? I was getting into the personal development. It was like really resonating with me. I was starting to see some positive influences in my own life. And I was like, okay, how do I increase my education? And that was the secret that I did, is I turned my car into a mobile classroom. And I stopped just listening to random things, meaning the radio, right? I mean, it's not that I don't enjoy music, because I do. And I enjoy certain genres of music, and I like songs and all those kinds of things. But that was an easy switch to turn off to increase my education. So every single day I was working 6 days a week. So that's 12 hours a week. I was consuming different CDs is what they were back in the day. So the Lead the Field, I have it up here on my shelf. That's a CD pack. But this is before the digital media, the MP3s and things. But yeah, I would just listen to the greats, the Jim Rohns, Earl Nightingales, the Brian Tracys, the Bob Proctors. And then I've recently discovered like David Nagel. Obviously, Tony Robbins would be another one. Brendan Burchard. Sometimes it depends on what he's talking about, is very good as well, as far as somebody current. But that's what I did, is I increased my education and I started to decrease my entertainment. Yeah. And that made a huge difference in my life, which is that E to E ratio. So yeah, I'm curious what your questions are.
Yeah. So I first of all, I love that, to turn the car into a personal development studio. So I've heard that aspect before, because I remember back in my realtor days, I wouldn't do that 100%, but maybe 50% of the time it would be a podcast. Another 50% it would be, music or, something that I would enjoy. But yeah, I guess my question to you was, as far as implementing this, I know you mentioned your car. Do you do this for, watching TV? Like, how does that fit in with maybe hanging with your wife after dinner? Like, what does that look like on a personal level, not in your car, I guess?
Yeah, I love it. So it's probably evolved over the years. As I mentioned at the beginning part, I was consumed by it. I was so fed up with where I was in my life. I was a retail store manager. I wasn't where I wanted to be. I was working literally 24/7. I was not happy. I was not a good person. And what I mean, I wasn't mean, but I just wasn't a happy person. And my wife can attest to that. We talk about it jokingly a lot nowadays. But the point is I was so desperate to change. I literally shut everything off at the time, meaning it's not that I wouldn't watch any television, but you've got to remember, this is pre the internet that we know of today, right? It's not that Facebook wasn't around or social media wasn't around back then, but it wasn't the way it is today. So it was easier for me to disconnect from those distractions. So yes, I would listen to things in my car for sure, but then I was not watching as much television at night as well. I've heard from other folks, I think this was a Dennis Waitley thing. He talked about, when he wrote his best-selling books, and he did that during prime time. And that means when everybody else is watching television at, say, between 6 p.m. and 10 p.m., that's when he's working on himself, on his craft, on his writing his books. And when I heard those kinds of things, it's like, yeah, that's what I need to do. So I was trying to mimic what other quote unquote successful people were doing. And I was hearing the same patterns in different ways from different people. So as I've gone down my journey, I've allowed myself to include more things back in. As you know, social media, once again, is a thing. It's not that I don't get stuck down a social media rabbit trail, because I do sometimes, but I usually try to do it from an educational standpoint. I try not to do it from a mind-numbing, just scrolling thing. I'm usually trying to learn something. That helps. TV, I've given myself the pleasure of the NFL football. I just enjoy football. I've never played football, which I think is probably the way I like it. It's because I'm learning it and I'm discovering it, and the ins and outs and all that. That's a story for another day. But I guess I've brought that back into my entertainment, and I've allowed myself to do that. So on a Sunday, I'll sit most of the day and watch some football. But in the meantime, I'm journaling. Anytime I have an idea, I'll write it down. I've always got my journal next to me. So I've got two separate journals. I talk about journaling a lot, but I've got my day-to-day journal, but then I've also got an idea journal that I'll have my idea journal with me most of the time as well. And if I have an idea, I'll just pull it out and I'll make sure that I jot it down, because my mind is always racing, trying to think of different ideas, different topics. So that's really how I try to do it nowadays. I don't listen to the radio in the car. Sometimes I'm just even silent. A lot of times nowadays, I don't listen to anything, meaning I get as much enjoyment out of just being with my own thoughts, thinking through different challenges, different ideas, being present. Yesterday, actually, we're recording this towards the end of the year or beginning of 2025, and it's cold outside here in Indiana, but it was a nice day, and I actually dropped the top. I have a convertible. I put the top down, and I was just enjoying the day, and I didn't have anything playing. Hopefully I'm answering your question. Is there anything more that you want to get out of that? But I'm trying to describe it as I've evolved from the beginning to where I am today. Yeah,
no, I love the examples. That's exactly what I was looking for. And I think the one thing that you mentioned that I wanted to dive into a little bit more is, you mentioned you were mimicking other people who are successful. And I think we've heard this phrase, success leaves clues, right? And that's exactly what you were doing. You weren't trying to reinvent the wheel. You were saying, all right, well, this gentleman writes from 6 to 10 o'clock at night. He's not watching Netflix like a lot of other people. He's getting things done, and he's successful in the way I want to be successful. So let me take a page out of his book and kind of go from there. So I love that. I mean, success leaves clues is one of the biggest things. And that's why we, listen to other podcasters and read other people's books. Tony Robbins. I mean, I think he even says that a lot as well. So it's such a good thing to kind of keep in your head.
Yeah, we've referred to Jim Rohn several times in the quote. I'm going to botch the exact quote up, but hopefully the idea will come across. But he talks about successful and unsuccessful people. And he says successful people have 24 hours in a day. And unsuccessful people have 24 hours in a day. And then in the Challenge to Succeed program, he goes, wouldn't that drive you nuts until you figured out and realized what the difference was between successful and unsuccessful people when we have the same 24 hours in a day? And he said the solution is time management. Successful people manage their time effectively, actively. They're not just passively going through the motions. And once again, when I heard things like that, as simple as those concepts are, it's challenging because we are distracted. I'm distracted. You're distracted all the time. But it's being in the driver's seat. We talked about that recently on an episode as far as taking control of your thoughts, realizing that now is the only moment that we have. We don't have to worry about the future. We don't have to worry about the past. It's just now. And understanding that we all have 24 hours in a day. And how are you going to maximize those 24 hours? And so once again, that's where I've learned this EDE ratio and just making sure it's in balance. I think that at times you need to go all in on one versus the other, but then giving yourself a little bit of grace. As I mentioned, we're right in the middle of football season here towards the end. And that's where, for me, it's like I'm giving myself some time just to relax a little bit, unwind. It actually makes my mind more active, thinking about great things, which has been fun as well. Some different ideas will come to mind, which has been a lot of fun too.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I've heard that on other podcasts, or maybe it was in a book about entrepreneurs. Sometimes there's periods or times on the calendar where you need to really sprint and, like you said, go 100%. And other times you need to really pull back and say, all right, I need a break, or I need to maybe dial that back from 100% to 60%, whether that's, marketing or sales or watching TV like we're talking about. So you really have to understand what is going to work for you, what that ratio is. And I know Jim Rohn talks about seasons all the time. There's obviously physical seasons in the year, but there's also seasons in our lives, in our businesses, in our relationships. So really being aware of where you are and, whether to go 100% or 0% or anywhere in the middle, that's a call that you have to make.
So when I first started, as I mentioned, I had to go 100%. I knew that when I discovered things that the beliefs, they were challenging my beliefs. They were challenging everything that I had been taught up to that point as an adult. And I realized that I've got to go in 100%. I mean, I've got to give this my all and see if this is actually true. What they were teaching me, right? What they were telling me, was it true? And I had to put myself in the driver's seat. And when I did that and I started to get the results, I was like, wow, this is amazing. I want to do more, which is, led you to do more and to be more and to then start sharing it with others. I mean, I started sharing the concepts with my family. My father, as I've mentioned in the past, he didn't understand or know any of this either. He wasn't exposed to any of this, which I believe is why he struggled at times with some anxiety. I wish I had the ability to talk to him today to kind of maybe dig a little bit deeper and find out what he was believing and thinking. But when I started sharing these concepts with him, his life started to change. He started to be different. He was like a different human being. And it was, once again, just being exposed and diving down the rabbit trails in your education, your self-education. Working on yourself is such a big, big thing in terms of accomplishing bigger things out there for yourself. That's how it's been for me. And like I said, that's how it's been with others that I've shared with it as well. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And then just bringing it back to, the EDE ratio, one thing that I've kind of brought to this podcast, I think I've said it 2 or 3 times already at this point is, is this action going to help me achieve my goal, or is it going to take me further away from my goal? And I think, this is a perfect example of, entertainment is great. Watching Netflix, I do it. We all probably do it.
I do it too.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun. It's relaxing, but if you're doing it more often than you should, is it going to help you achieve your goal? It might help you achieve your goal of relaxing with your wife and building that relationship. Maybe. I don't think, that's a personal decision.
Right.
But when it comes to, either am I going to watch Netflix or am I going to listen to a podcast or an audiobook that's going to give me positive affirmations or better beliefs, that's a decision for you to decide. But that's where the ratio really comes in at the end of the day.
Having that result, having the burning desire for a different result, whether it's building a business, whether it's launching a podcast, whether it's having a better relationship with your family, whatever that result was. For me, it was I just had to get and eliminate this negative feeling life that I had built for myself. It was bad. It was just not fun. And and I had to get away. I had to figure out how. And yeah, this E to E ratio was a big driver in that. So you've asked me about my ratio. I know you've given it some thought since I brought it up to you. Give me an idea of where you're at in your life with that E to E ratio, Greg.
So I can't calculate a number.
Yeah, it's not really a number. So that's where it sounds like it would be an actual physical number, and my mind would go to that as well. But yeah, it's not. It's more of a just like a focus, an idea of I'm focusing here versus I'm focusing there type of an idea in my mind. That's how I kind of see it.
Yeah, I think it's just more being aware of,
Right.
your options, and like you talked about, your ability to choose. But yeah, as far as my ratio goes, I mean, I definitely watch TV, but maybe like 2 hours every night with my wife, but that's more of just kind of, relaxing, having dinner and being with her. I don't really watch TV as far as like in my bedroom. Yeah, I don't know. So I don't know the actual ratio. I know when I go for my walks and when I'm in my car, it's probably 75% education, 25% entertainment. If I had to put a number, that would probably be my ballpark. But like you said, it goes in different seasons and waves. Maybe there's 3 days in a row where I'm listening to music in my car, and it's just the way it is, and that's the one I'm feeling that day. But I think the whole point of this podcast is just to bring awareness to the E to E ratio and have our listeners and our audience just really question what their ratio is, and if they want to improve it, how can they improve it? I think we've given them some good examples here as well.
Yeah. So it just, like you said, and you nailed it, it's becoming aware that it's even a thing. It's being aware that when you're mindlessly scrolling on your phone or binge watching your latest Netflix episodes, it's just understanding that is taking away from this future that you may or may not have anxiety about, right? You might be having anxiety that you can't do or you should do or you shouldn't have done. So all of those topics or ideas and beliefs about yourself, if you are having any anxiety about a future, but your E to E ratio is off, meaning you're focusing too much on your entertainment, that's an easy way to recognize that. And then once again, take action. You're going to be able to make a choice, make a different choice. And with that choice, then you can get a different result. And that's where this E to E ratio for me has been huge. That's why I definitely wanted to bring it to you here today. So, man, I think we're going to leave it there. Is there anything else that you can think of to leave folks with as far as some encouragement to help them, get a little bit further on in their personal development journey?
Yeah. So the last thing that I'll say is it reminded me of a quote that I've heard more towards like physical health, but I think it applies to exactly what we're talking about is, do you want your life to be hard now and easy later, or easy now and hard later? Meaning, if you put in the work now, I can relate this to, let's say, losing weight, right? If you want to, is it going to be hard? It's hard now to put in the work, but it's going to be easy later in life, enjoying that weight loss and the healthy body, as opposed to easy now, not putting in the work, but it's going to be really hard later when you're facing, physical ailments and you're getting older and that kind of thing. But you can relate that to exactly what we're talking about here, the E to E ratio, putting in the work now and, working on yourself, personal development, and then, maybe watching a little more TV later on when you're, a little bit further down your journey.
Love it. Yeah, man, I love that. So I appreciate the wisdom you're sharing. The peak framework, the knowledge piece is so important. Seeking wisdom from folks that have been there, done that, has been crucial for me. And I know that folks, if you're listening to us today, anything that we're sharing, if we can help in any way, please reach out to us. Let us know, info@richmind.co, and we'll definitely try to get back to you as quick as possibly can. You can check out even our resources on our homepage at richmind.co. We've got different blog posts. We've got different resources you can check out on your own to really help you in this personal development journey. And it's been so crucial for me and my success. I know it has been for Greg as well. So next time, folks, a little bit of a teaser, it's going to be a little bit of a pivot. We're going to move from this personal development type topics. We're going to dive into a little bit more of some financial education. There's actually a thief. You're being robbed literally every day. And if you don't understand what this thief is, you just can't take any different action, right? It's just going to continuously happen. But once you become aware of it, it's almost one of those things that once you see it, once you understand it, then you can make different choices. You can make different decisions. And this thief, you can turn it actually into a positive flip it on its head, turn it into a positive versus having it taking away from you every single day. And so that's going to be the topic of this next episode. The thief that's robbing you blind and you don't even know it. It's going to be a lot of fun. So Greg, man, I appreciate your time and being with us here today. The wisdom that you're sharing on the podcast, it's been so much fun. I know I had you leave one last note, but is there any one last thing that you want to share with folks today?
No, I think we nailed it. I'm actually grateful that you brought the E2E to life for me. So I really appreciate it because I learned a lot in researching it and just having this conversation. So I know our audience hopefully did as well.
That's fantastic. So folks, I'll even try to keep thinking of things. So it's on my journey, I've done a lot of this on my own. I didn't really have a lot of resources besides the books and the audio programs. So I'll try to be thinking about like topics that I've learned, like the E/E ratio, and I'll try to bring those to you here on an episode and dive a little bit deeper and teach you what I've learned, how I'm using them in my day-to-day life, and hopefully they can positively impact you going forward. So go out there, have a fantastic day. Like and support the Rich Mind podcast. Share it with your family and friends. We'd greatly appreciate that. And Greg and I will be back on the next episode again very soon. Until then, folks, bye now.
Thank you for joining us today on the Rich Mind podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like and share it with someone you know. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Rich Mind podcast on your favorite platform and never miss an episode. Want to dive deeper into transforming your financial mindset? Visit our website to download your free 5-step guide titled From Dead-End Job to Entrepreneurial Freedom, designed to help you conquer your fears and start on your entrepreneurial path with confidence. One last thing, don't ever forget that your mind is the first place where wealth is created. Keep dreaming big, take action, and together, let's build wealth, a legacy, and a life we love. Until next time.